So last year at about this time, there was a lot of clamor because the sea surface temperatures were looking quite warm. They were looking very similar to the biggest event that we've experienced, 1997, 1998. The El Nino didn't materialize for a bunch of reasons that we've talked about before, namely that the atmosphere didn't respond. And now we've sort of never really lost that background state of the warm sea surface temperatures.
That's right. Yep.
And they're warmer now than they were at this time last year.
Exactly. And that's sort of the really interesting part. It's like this El Nino took 18 months to sort of get going. Indeed had that warm water slosh across a year ago when we were kind of having the same podcast. But there were a couple other things that weren't at play, and there were these westerly wind bursts, the atmospheric events that sort of help connect the atmosphere to it across the Pacific. They just weren't lining up, and they weren't in quite the right spot. And we saw a couple more of those sort of move across over the past year, and now they're lined up in a really good spot. So you had to have that coordination of them. So you have this sort of kind of randomness of the weather going on above it, and then this background state moving, and there's a little bit of capriciousness of, do those things line up at the right time, which is why I think the forecasting becomes so difficult.
Part of the problem last year was that there just wasn't the sea surface temperature gradient in the tropical Pacific Ocean. It was warm throughout, and what you need is sort of cooler in the West Pacific and warmer in the East Pacific to create that gradient.
Yeah, exactly. So that the bit of that chicken and egg of, can you get those things to sort of line up at the right time, and seeing that gradient set up, seeing that convection move over to the Central Pacific, and then subsequently seeing some of the signs of the atmospheric coupling, like this idea of the breakdown in the Walker circulation, where you start to see the upper atmosphere sort of change directions or have wind flow in different directions. And at the bottom here too, didn't see that maybe for a couple times last spring. And there was a mismatch too between the time of the Kelvin wave coming over, the time of the westerly wind bursts. Some of those things were actually like a month or two out of phase from each other. And at that point, things really they kind of cratered the next couple of months into early summer. Another Kelvin wave, some more westerly wind bursts through the summer. But now you're at the point now where everything is in lockstep with each other, and the atmosphere is very strongly coupled with the ocean. It's way different than last spring in the sense of it's much more favorable for conditions to continue. And that's where you see the models are going bonkers right now. These models, all sorts of different physical, dynamical models, mathematical models, ingesting satellite data and surface data and ocean data. The models are extremely excited, but what they're queuing in on is a lot of these features sort of fitting together at this time of year, way different than it did this time last year. But again, we had the same conversation a year ago, and the models look very similar, but there's additional lines of evidence now that point to a much better chance at this thing hanging together.